All right, welcome back. So we're here with Melanie from Sino Group. Again, thank you for being here. You just mentioned that you've got a structure within Sino Group in terms of how you view ESG and have an internal ESG framework. And you talked about 3 pillars. I'm really curious to learn about that, but also curious to understand kind of how that was created. My understanding is that you were actually involved in that process. So for all the learners out there, maybe they're part of an ESG team, or maybe they work within a company and they're trying to integrate a focus and priorities from an ESG perspective. Can you kind of walk us through how that was first created, and then like the pillars that you've created and the perspective on ESG from the kind of group perspective now?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think as a conglomerate, big, large company with thousands of employees.
And it's worth pointing out, sorry to interrupt you, you have 3 listed companies,
Yes.
is that right? Plus
Yes.
other non-listed companies.
Yes.
So it's a very large group. For those that don't know, you can check out Sino Group. So I just wanted to clarify.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right, that's right. So actually, I think a very key point is that although it's very important to have the driver in ESG and sustainability, but communications is so important. So when we decide strategies or pillar in ESG and sustainability, it shouldn't just be the own decision makers from the sustainability team. We need to work with respective departments as well.
Yeah.
So I do remember back in the days when we want to sort of look into the strategies of sustainability at Sino Group. First, we do hire external professional consultants to work with us to look into the market right now, what are the hot ESG demands and trends, and then has to be also relevant to the operations. We can't have something that is totally different from the operations.
Right.
It has to be very operations related. So that's where it started. And then when the consultant came up with some of the ideas, we don't just say, hey, okay, let's go for it. We do actually talk to different departments. So for instance, we have 3 pillars, right? The first one is green living. Green means environmental friendly. And when we come up with that idea, we look into waste management, electricity consumption, water consumption, but we also talk to respective departments like the operation team as well.
Yeah.
Oh, is that okay with you? And then the living actually means wellness. And wellness is not just externally, but more importantly, it's within the organization. So we talk to HR. And then when we look into innovative design, we talk to the development divisions that build the new buildings. Can you put more innovative measures in the new buildings? And then community spirit as well. We talk to different people as well to see, hey, what kind of charity works do we do? So yes, it all comes to the communications. Very importantly, is to join hands together with different departments to respect their views as well. So it's sort of like going back and forth before we finalize the whole strategies.
And so it sounds like the way that you're describing ESG within Sino Group, first, this is at the group level. Do individual companies also have ESG teams, or is it mostly handled at the group level?
Well, I think just like many other developers or industry players in Hong Kong, most of the ESG strategies will be driven from the headquarter sustainability team. So I am from the headquarter sustainability team.
Yeah.
It really depends on the operations and the portfolio as well. So for instance, because we do have operations outside Hong Kong, in Singapore, for instance, so I do have a sustainability in charge at Singapore and also at Sydney, Australia. It is important because especially knowing that ESG regulations also very important. It's important to have different ESG teams or responsibility at different regions as well. So to make sure that we do align with the ESG regulations in that region.
Yeah. At some point, one of the things that's interesting to me is in a group format, which we haven't really covered in this program so far, is the potential for conflict, and where some companies are publicly listed, and so therefore they're kind of beholden to their shareholders, and then others that aren't. But then there's a kind of a top-down, at least group perspective on ESG. I'm just curious at some point in understanding if there's any friction there. But one of the things that I think was unusual in terms of how you're describing your role and the way that your group focuses on ESG is that it's a little more expansive, I think, in some ways than the way that some people do it, because you're also kind of looping in corporate social responsibility, corporate philanthropy, which of course can fit into those ESG pillars in terms of like social governance or whatever. But it sounds like it's a very thought out process where you've really like, it kind of it runs throughout all that you do. And so A, I'm curious if that's accurate, if I'm describing that accurately. But B, I'm curious if that's true. That kind of sounds like there's some top-down leadership in terms of the way they've built that into the group and into the company. So again, I'm just curious, A, is that true? And how does it work? And then B, does that mean that, you know, this is kind of like a group directive that's coming from leadership? And then how do you balance all the different, you know, maybe stakeholders in that conversation?
That's a very good question. Well, first of all, actually, we do have foundations that are set by the owners of Sino Group. And the reason being is that after all, we are listed companies, and we do need to take care of the shareholders' views as well. We can't spend all the monies in charities without getting their consent. So actually, a lot of companies in Hong Kong, and we're not the only one, they do set up private foundations. And we have around 3 to 4 different foundations that supports the charity arms as well. So that really helps and exactly answer your questions that after all, if we are going to be a responsible company, we also need to take care of the shareholders' perspective as well. So that's why a lot of companies, including us, will have set up charities, foundations that focus of donating, sponsoring under the foundations as well. So that it's sort of separate from the main revenue stream of the corporates. Second questions about the leadership driven. Well, we're very humbled to learn that Sino did really well in ESG according to the ratings, etc. And the reason behind, I've been asked a lot, what are the success factor? And really the leadership driven is so important. And with that in mind, we have an ESG steering committee set up over 10 years ago. I have been a secretary of the ESG steering committee for over 10 years. And it's really great because not only the Sino Group owner will sit at the ESG steering committee, but we also get our board of directors representative to sit at the committee. And that is important because when it comes to really key ESG decision making, especially in terms of the governance, for instance, we have over 18 ESG policies and we have 38 sustainability visions. All these are governance. And it does require the board of directors and the senior management to ensure that they know about it. So it's very important that having a strong leadership driven is also the key to make sure an organization can drive ESG improvements.
And so as a non-revenue generating team, I'm assuming they stick you in a basement somewhere and you're not able to communicate with leadership. No, I mean, it sounds like you've got a direct kind of channel with them, but can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, well, I'm thankful I don't have a basement office. Actually, my office is beautiful. It gazes through the Victoria Harbour. And I have around 6 people in my team. I would say a fair number because I know a lot of companies, they have around the same kind of numbers as well. Some have more. But well, nowadays, actually more and more companies, they care about sustainability team and ESG. And we are very, very fortunate that back in very early age, I have a direct reporting line to the top decision maker of the company. And that is important because sometimes when there are some complicated ESG matters, I can just go directly to the top decision maker and they can make the decision very efficiently. And especially when the company is a bit large and complicated as well, top-down decision making can make things easier. So I actually think that having a top-down and direct communications mutually with the decision maker is very important to help the company grow in ESG culture. And secondly, for me, I think it's not just, well, ESG is now very important, I have to say. A lot of big shareholders like BlackRock, for instance, and then big investors, when they invest in certain company, they're not just looking at the economic performance, but nowadays we were told, and we actually met with a lot of big players in terms of investors, they do also ask about ESG performance. So actually we do work hand in hand with the corporate finance team and investor relations as well, and whenever there's a big investors trying to look into investing our companies, I actually went to this meeting with them and talk to them about ESG. So to answer your question, I don't think we are not revenue generated. I actually do think that nowadays ESG is so important that it does go hand in hand with the finance as well. And it is a very big important value for others to invest as well. If we do well in ESG, we see that the shares and the shareholders also have bigger keen interest to look into certain company. I think that is the growing trend at the moment.
Yeah. So again, you know, we talk about this many times throughout the entire program, but I think it's important to understand that you know, we cannot say it enough that ESG is not just a box-ticking exercise. It's not just an acronym that is going to be used because, you know, it's required or whatever. I mean, there are certain aspects of it that are increasingly required, but it's about creating companies that are sustainably profitable over a long period of time. And for those of you out there that are trying to figure out how to build this or integrate this into your company, whether you're a startup, whether you own your business, whether you work within a large multinational, really integrating the people, the purpose, and those lines of communication is very, very critical. So thank you for that.